Madeline Jennings was screaming at the tow truck driver, but the one-way only sign was crystal clear. Her SUV was already halfway up the lift, getting dragged off the easement road she and her little HOA disciples had used for years like it belonged to them. The same road I now owned. The same road they'd fined me $60,000 over, though I turned that fine into the best investment I'd ever made. One that turned their cul-de-sac into a cul-de-trap. And the best part? They never saw it coming. But to really understand how it got to that point, you'd have to go back about 6 months. That's when I inherited the house from my late uncle. Old property, well-built, sitting right on the edge of a private, gated community called Glenwood Pines. It had charm, good bones, and, as I'd soon learn, a snake pit masquerading as a neighborhood association. I'm not new to zoning issues or land disputes. I am a civil engineer by trade. I know easements and property lines like the back of my hand. But nothing in my career prepared me for the HOA that ruled Glenwood Pines like a sanctimonious cult. The place was run by Madeline Jennings, a woman who looked like she filed restraining orders against anyone who painted outside the beige color palette. The first red flag came in the form of a woman on my doorstep just 4 days after I moved in. Mid-50s, stiff as a board, a smirk that could sour milk. She introduced herself with all the warmth of a cease and desist notice. "Hi, I'm Madeline Jennings, president of the Glenwood Pines Homeowners Association. Welcome to the neighborhood." Then she handed me a thick envelope that felt more like an indictment than a welcome package. Inside? A dense packet of community guidelines, a calendar filled with social events I had no intention of attending, and a warning literally titled Notice of Violation. It claimed my driveway was in breach of HOA rules because it connected to what they called a privately maintained access road. I blinked at her, chuckled, and asked if this was standard for new residents. She didn't smile. She just pointed down the road and said, "That's a community asset, and every time you use it, you're trespassing." She turned and left like she'd just blessed me with divine judgment. It would have been laughable if she hadn't followed up a week later with a formal fine. $60,000. That's right. 60 grand for unauthorized road access, property damage, and violation of community traffic codes. The notice was printed on paper that tried to look like parchment and had the HOA's logo, some ridiculous combination of a pine cone and a gavel embossed in gold. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mix-up. My uncle had lived there for over 30 years, long before the HOA was even formed. So I dug into the paperwork he'd left behind. Tucked between property tax receipts and faded utility bills was exactly what I needed, a notarized, permanent easement agreement granting access to the road. It predated the HOA by nearly a decade. I took that document straight to Madeline. She didn't even look at it. Just said, "Our legal team will have that revoked. You can't just claim access to a community road. It sets a bad precedent." I asked her what kind of precedent, and she replied, "People doing whatever they want, thinking they're above the rules." I told her I wasn't above the rules. I was above her nonsense. She didn't laugh. From there, things escalated quickly. First came the signs, new ones posted near my driveway saying "No unauthorized entry," with some fake-looking HOA insignia. Then came the pictures, her standing across the street taking snapshots of my driveway like she was building a case for the FBI. And then came the tow truck. I woke up one morning to the sound of chains clanking. Walked out in my pajamas to see a tow truck backing up to my work truck in my own property. I asked the driver what the hell he thought he was doing. He shrugged, said the HOA called it in and he was just following orders. I had to pay $300 to get my truck back. No apology. No recourse. Just another smug email from Madeline quoting an HOA policy that didn't even apply to my parcel. That's when I stopped playing nice. I went full civil engineer mode, pulled every deed, plat map, and easement agreement in my possession. I dug through surveyor reports from the 1980s and found the golden ticket. Not only did my uncle's easement cover access, it also included maintenance rights, traffic use, and this was the kicker, first right of refusal on adjacent road segments if they ever came up for sale. Turns out, he'd already made a down payment on a nearby parcel labeled Easement Extension. The paperwork was sitting in a folder labeled, in my uncle's handwriting, "For when they get nosy." I took everything to my lawyer, a guy named Marcus who's about as slick as they come. He flipped through the documents and grinned like he'd found buried treasure. You technically own the traffic artery that serves half this neighborhood, he said. You're not trespassing. You're the damn toll booth. He leaned back in his chair and asked, So what do you want to do about it? At first, I just wanted them to leave me alone. Cancel the fine. Maybe throw up a gate to keep their nosy patrols out. But then Madeline taped a cease and desist to my front door. It accused me of unauthorized use of the road and demanded I construct an alternative driveway. At the bottom, she wrote, You're not special. The rules apply to everyone. That was the moment I flipped the switch from defense to offense. I called the land trust managing the rest of the easement property and made a few very pointed inquiries. Turns out the rest of the land was still unclaimed and dirt cheap. Within 10 business days, I filed the paperwork, finished the transfer, and officially owned the only legal access road into Glenwood Pines. Not just an easement. Not just access. Ownership. That meant I could post signs. Restrict use. Make it one way. Or, hell, shut it down completely if I wanted. Then came their next movie, a notice claiming my home was now under architectural compliance review. Mind you, I wasn't part of the HOA. Never had been. My uncle had intentionally opted out. Yet somehow they were now claiming jurisdiction over my shed, my door, even my mailbox. I nearly choked on my coffee when I read the word annex. They were trying to annex my property into the HOA like it was 19th century imperialism. My lawyer laughed out loud when I showed him. They don't have that kind of power, he said. This isn't a municipality, it's a glorified book club with a budget. But while their annexation wouldn't hold up in court, it gave them enough perceived authority to begin acting like I was one of them. Letters started pouring in orders to repaint my fence, remove my uncle's tool shed, and replace my non-compliant front door. They even said my welcome mat clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. And then came Chuck Madeline's husband and self-appointed neighborhood patrol, wandering around my lawn with a clipboard, making notes like he was doing a building inspection. He knocked on my door, told me my gutters were sagging, and offered to report it to the compliance committee. I told him I'd report his face to a door if he didn't get off my porch. I went quiet after that, but only because I was planning my strike. I finalized the purchase of the last strip of land that connected the access road to the public street. It took another few weeks, but once it was done, I now owned the sole legal entrance and exit to Glenwood Pines. Then I posted a sign. Private easement entry by permission, only one way out. Caused immediate chaos. Residents were furious. Food deliveries were getting canceled. Uber drivers were rerouting. One guy had to park 2 blocks away and got soaked by a rogue sprinkler. And Madeline? She was livid. She sent me a cease and desist accusing me of creating a hostile environment and endangering community welfare. My lawyer responded with a letter stating the facts. I owned the road. Their access was a privilege, not a right. Then came the cherry on top. Madeline herself broke my posted traffic restriction, drove right through the one-way sign like it didn't apply to her. I caught it all on camera. I mailed her a $150 trespass fine, certified mail, of course. She emailed me back, laughing it off. So I sent another notice. This time I CC'd the HOA board. A week later, her minion, Lisa, did the same thing. Drove right in like the sign was a decoration. She got her own bill. Then Madeline showed up with a packet full of resident signatures demanding I cease unilateral restrictions. I looked at her and asked, do any of these people own the road? She didn't answer. Then they can take their signatures, roll them up into a scroll, and shove it wherever they want. She turned bright red and said I was making enemies. I told her good. I was running low on entertainment. And just when I thought they'd reached their limit, the HOA hired a crew to begin sidewalk expansion in my land. The foreman said he was just following orders. So I called the cops. An officer arrived, looked at my easement documents, and shut the whole operation down. Madeline arrived mid-scene, trying to smooth things over like she wasn't authorizing illegal construction. I told her if anyone stepped foot on my easement again, I'd file civil claims. She didn't argue, just left, fuming. That's when I installed the gate. Not big or flashy, just a simple motorized barrier. Emergency services had override codes. Residents who signed an access agreement got personal codes. Madeline? She didn't get one. She tried to tailgate a neighbor through and got stuck halfway while the gate locked down. She had to reverse her SUV while 3 kids on bikes watched her struggle. A week later, the HOA held an emergency meeting. Residents demanded answers. They wanted to know why their trash pickup stopped, why Amazon wouldn't deliver, why they were paying dues for a road they didn't even own. Someone finally asked, "Is it true we've been using a privately owned road for a decade?" Madeline tried to dance around it, but the damage was done. Within 48 hours, the board voted her out. I didn't even have to show up. They sent me an apology and offered to cover my legal fees in exchange for lifting the restrictions. I agreed on one condition: they amend their charter to acknowledge they have no authority over the easement. Ever again. They agreed. And just like that, I became the first and last person in Glenwood Pines to defeat the HOA without ever stepping foot in their meetings. Madeline moved out 2 weeks later. Quiet. No goodbye. Last I heard, she was arguing with a moving truck driver about scratches on her antique dresser. I still keep the one-way signs posted, only now they say, "Respect the road." People joke that I should run for mayor. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who got tired of being pushed around. And instead of yelling, I let the paperwork do the yelling for me. As for that $60,000 fine, never paid a dime. Instead, I turned it into something far more satisfying, a reminder that when you own the road, you set the rules. And I made damn sure they'd never forget it.